Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is 23rd of December 2024. The last few days of the year are left, but we've got lots to discuss with you in our show today. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with poliomyelitis, the new world countrywide polio program that has begun in Pakistan, the issues pertaining to polio and children in certain areas of Pakistan, and of course the general desire and how to move about to completely eliminate polio from Pakistan. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Israeli aggression in Gaza. We are going to talk specifically from a Palestinian point of view on what has been happening in Palestine, whether it be around 50 people who've been killed, butchered in the last 24 hours alone, whether it be the continuous bombardment by the Israeli military on the different camps where the Palestinians are staying, the displacement of the Palestinians from one area to the other, or the lack of regard whatsoever as far as the plight of the people of Palestine is concerned, whether it be on the humanitarian front, whether it be on the lack of food, water and basic health necessities, is also going to be part of our next segment. Our third story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Donald Trump, who has threatened to retake the Panama Canal, and has accused Panama of unfair fees as far as the fee to pass through the canal is concerned. And of course, as we know, Donald Trump, he has been quite brutal in his way of criticizing Panama. There has been a reaction from Panama as well. We'll be discussing that in our third story. Then comes our last story, and that concerns South Korea, where a team has developed an Ironman robot that helps paraplegics walk. Iron Man, of course, is a Marvel film, and the suit was worn by one of the characters in that film. And the basic aim is to kind of replicate the whole concept of Iron Man and make paraplegics. Paraplegics means those who are paralyzed from their forelimbs, who cannot walk otherwise, to have the opportunity to walk some one way or the other through the use of this robot that could maybe give them a new lease of life. This is going to be our final story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns poliomyelitis. What needs to be done, what is being done by our country, and what is that disease that everybody calls polio, but some have reservations when it comes to taking the vaccine. We've been joined in the studios by Dr. Hasan Orooj. He's a former DG Health Services Islamabad and External Supervisor Public Health at Baylor University in Texas, and co-host Director Infection Prevention Control and AMR. Thank you very much, Dr. Hasan Orooj, to have joined us. Dr. Hasan, let's begin with some of the measures that have been taken by some of our provincial governments. The KP government introduces a new policy deciding not to issue birth, death and marriage certificates to families who have refused the polio vaccination. And of course, this is for Peshawar and the village councils as well. This has been applied to these areas as well. The new measure apparently seems to incentivize compliance as well as improve the vaccination rates. Will the vaccination rates improve through measures such as these? Do you feel measures such as these need to be applied stringently across the board? Maybe that will force people to give their children vaccines. How do you view initiatives such as these as well?
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much, Omar, for calling me here. There are two ways of tackling a public health program, especially for the community. One is the provision of services. Second is incentivization. So when you incentivize, there are again various approaches which different countries have taken. One is very strictly laws, implementation of laws and enforcement. And other is a soft issue, which is like changing the behaviors of the people, motivating them and things like that. So unless we provide the services up to the doorstep and we provide the polio vaccine, we cannot really enforce that, because if the people are deprived of the polio vaccine. Now, in Pakistan, the polio program is being run since 1988, 1994 actually. So the polio campaign, which is run many times a year, there is no issue of vaccination being available at the doorstep of the communities.
But there are so many people who refuse. There are parents who refuse the vaccination, saying that they're giving mundane reasons. Why are there such mundane reasons present in the mind of the people? And secondly, what needs to be done in order to make them understand the importance of the polio vaccine?
Yes, that's a very good question. I was coming to that. The thing is that it is a societal and a cultural issue. We as a society, and with the presence of the social media, we believe more on the rumors and things like that. For example, the polio vaccine has infertility drops in it, or it is a conspiracy theory. I mean, there are myths attached with the polio vaccine, mistrust sometimes. But because of the continuous campaigns, the mistrust has been reduced tremendously. However, the polio virus, the places from where the polio virus is, polio cases are being reported. You know, there are two different things: polio case and environmental sample. Polio
What
case,
is the difference between that also? Because you know, we heard hundreds of environmental samples that were positive, that were found very recently in Pakistan. Kindly explain us the difference between these environmental samples and actual cases. Are they interrelated some way or the other?
They are, because polio case means some child has been affected by the polio virus and entered into a paralytic state.
All right.
Paralysis has taken place. The disease has established in that child. Environmental sample positive means that the sewerage water, because the polio virus is excreted in the feces, the sewerage water is contaminated, further contaminated with the polio virus. It contains the polio virus. So, the samples are being taken from the sewerage water, sewerage pipelines of different districts, different communities, and if the virus is positive, that is known as the environmental sample is positive.
All right.
And that could be contamination of, I mean, the drinking water as well.
So many other children will get contaminated.
Exactly. Because the polio virus is spread through orofecal route, meaning by from unhygienic conditions existing in a community, and they are not washing proper. I mean, simple proper hand washing makes a lot of difference. They are not washing hands, they are eating the food, they are giving their children, feeding their children with the same dirty hands, and the virus enters into their gut and absorbed into the blood. And then there, I'll explain later, there are two types of symptoms which may appear in the, when the polio virus enters. Should I explain it now?
Yes, please do, because I'd like to understand, is the feco-oral route, as you explained, the only route through which children can get contaminated with the poliomyelitis virus? Secondly, what are the other ways of getting polio apart from water, contaminated water?
Yeah, this is the major route, but it is present in the water. So, droplet infections which is ingested, because it is absorbed from the stomach.
Okay.
Once it is absorbed, it attacks the nervous system. By the way, let me tell you in a positive note that about 75% of the children who have has an attack of poliovirus remain symptomless.
All right. Oh.
Yeah.
Why is that so?
Because their immunity is strong.
Okay.
They always, I mean, the polio virus is normally affecting those children whose immunity, who are subnominal immunities. So, their immunity is strong, and there are other factors, their nutrition factors, the absorption of the polio vaccine and all that. Only less than 1%, actually it said 0.1 to 0.5% of the children enter into the paralysis stage. So, the percentage is very low, but still, I mean, still this low percentage, if you calculate the population of Pakistan, and if it is affecting it, the environment sample is positive in 33 districts, by the way. 33 districts mean, if every district we are collecting about 5 to 6 or 10 environmental samples, so more than 300 environmental samples may be positive. I mean this is in hypothetical calculation, but it's a huge number.
But 63 cases have turned positive as far as polio is concerned, out of which 26 are in Balochistan.
Yes.
And of course, Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa seem to be the areas that are most concentrated when it comes to
and
the
19 from Sindh.
Yes, 19 from Sindh. So why has polio resurfaced with such a veracity, with such an aggressive behavior in this year, or was it always there?
Polio was almost, we were very close to eradication. We call it the end game, because Pakistan and Afghanistan are the only places left where the polio virus exists. Now, I mean, some of the cases, because of the security situations and the brutalities which the Israeli government has done in Palestine, a couple of cases have been found positive there as well. The environmental sample is positive. The polio virus, unless it is totally eradicated for 3 years period, that country cannot claim itself to be 100% free of polio.
All right.
So we had zero almost cases almost I think for 1 year in 2021, but then again we had a surge of polio cases, 2 cases, then 18 cases, then again now 64 cases is a huge number. So the reservoir was still there. The environmental samples were still positive. Not the polio cases were nil, but the environmental samples were positive. So the fear of the virus was there.
All right. So, I mean, the fear of the virus is there, and you say for 3 years a country needs to be polio negative in order to be declared as free of polio. But there have been, you said we were almost nil, and then the whole cases began. Does Afghanistan have something to do with the number of environmental samples increasing, the number of polio cases increasing in Pakistan?
I think a very, very important issue, because Afghanistan and Pakistan are like two sisters joined together. I mean, a lot of people in KPK are married there, and likewise. And there is a huge communication between the two. We know that we have hosted millions of Afghan refugees in this country.
True.
And you cannot stop because it's a landlocked country. There is a business between the two countries. There is a communication. So that is why the border of KPK and Afghanistan is one epidemiological block.
All right.
Meaning by the polio campaign is done with the same strategies and on the same dates. And there's no discrimination of the border, because the virus doesn't respect borders.
Because but Dr. Hasan, I'd like to understand. You say one thing is the environmental samples, the other thing is the children getting the polio, and out of that also there is this huge percentage that does not get the symptoms of polio. They might be polio positive, but they do not get the symptoms. I'd like to understand, if we become, for example, how do you remove or completely eradicate the environmental samples as well as the polio cases from Pakistan? What measures need to be done in order for this to happen, and to happen for more than 12 months?
There are 2 things. We are in a sort of a war-like situation with polio. So continuous campaigns which is going on, but one thing which is very important, and I think we still need to stress, the government has to take care of that, is making polio part of the normal routine immunization program.
All right.
We have a routine immunization program where we give vaccines to the children and to the adults as well, but most of the time children up to the age of 5 years for pneumonia, for diarrhea, for typhoid, measles, etc., etc., tetanus, etc. Polio is part and parcel of that, but that in the normal immunization program, the polio is given just 2 to 3 times up to the age of 5 years. With the continuous polio vaccines, we give polio vaccine every month almost.
All right. This is a very important point, because I've read in many journals that a lot of parents are skeptical as to why the children are being given polio doses more than once a year. They say this is something else, this is not polio vaccine, or else the children would have just been immunized for once a year in their lifetime, or once a year. Why this continuous immunization of polio vaccine? Why are children given this polio vaccine? How can you make the parents understand that this continuous vaccination is necessary for children who are susceptible, or children who are in areas that are more predominantly positive as far as environmental samples are concerned?
We have to give these extra vaccines. You are very close to what actually the conclusion of the entire polio program is, because our routine immunization program is weak.
Okay.
If our routine immunization program, which is run in every country, I mean, you have not heard of polio campaigns in Switzerland or Sri Lanka or elsewhere, because they have, number 1, eradicated the polio, number 2, their routine immunization program is very strong, meaning by that each and every child in the country gets routine immunization.
All right.
So that is weak. If we have 50 to 60% children who are getting routine immunization, so what about the rest 40% who are not getting measles, tetanus and polio vaccine? That is why we have to do continuous campaigns. This is the reason. And that is the point I was stressing earlier, that we need to strengthen and merge and synchronize. There are efforts though, they in their action plan of the polio education program, they have said that synchronization of the routine EPI with the polio campaign. If we have strong health systems, it will eradicate like anything.
We also need to have strong environmental systems, maybe to get rid of the environmental positive environmental samples that come across, to ensure that the orofecal route is not the primary route of infection being transmitted, that whatever wherever the fecal route passes should be in a manner that it does not mix with the normal water.
Well, that's true, but there is a role of more of the personal hygiene habits here.
True.
Washing hands before every lunch and dinner and breakfast, feeding children with washed and hygienic conditions, and this socio-economic conditions in Pakistan and the awareness level. So we are stressing on polio eradication, but we need to have these 2-3 things which you have pointed out recently, that we need to eradicate the environmental aspects by teaching how to be clean, how to boil water before drinking. I mean, definitely.
Boiling water is such a normal process,
Exactly.
but how long should you boil water in order for it to be, for the polio virus to be eliminated?
Well, you just boil water up to its boiling point. I mean, just
not a couple of minutes once it starts boiling?
Once in winters it takes long, in summers it gets boiled very quickly. So just boiling point would be enough to eradicate polio.
What about washing hands? I remember in COVID it was being said we need to wash our hands continuously for 20 seconds with soap and then wash it out. That way the virus gets, either virus dies or it is no longer effective. Is it the same case with polio as well?
Yes, absolutely. Washing hand means washing for every virus or bacteria. It's not just for, 20 seconds means that it is a research that then you don't have to touch here and there before eating, you again contaminate your hand. So this is, and let me also add here that Pakistan is one of the countries where hospital acquired infections are very high, and just simply washing hands decreases the level of hospital acquired infection by 40%.
Oh, that's important.
Simple procedures make huge impact.
I think we should always start simply in order to be more effective.
Absolutely.
All right, coming to misconceptions regarding the polio vaccine. You have heard many a times, I have heard many a times about they say that this is a Western conspiracy, these vaccines are not real, and these are a conspiracy by certain nations to implant devices in order to somehow control us in the future or the children. Then it is being used to sterilize the children. Misconceptions such as these, how should we deal with such misconceptions?
You see, government has been doing a lot of efforts, have their communication strategies, experts, but I think we know our country very well. We have to have local experts, community has been engaged. Community engagement is the key, because influencers from the community, and we believe in, in the rural areas especially, we have a belief in our imams of mosques, and once they say anything, for example in dengue and corona infection, I used to, when I was Director General Health, I used to talk with the imams that please pronounce before khutbah or anything, just one sentence, but that makes an impact. So they are involving, but I think we need to involve them more intensely and aggressively.
All right.
The community engagement, the influencers, the imams, the students, the volunteers. So it's a teamwork. So myths and concepts, and also we have to have a very strong social media campaign, apart from the routine media campaign, to clarify rather than because social media campaigns are more of producing misconceptions. So why not to eradicate misconceptions through social media?
That is true, because specifically when it comes to polio vaccine, there are a lot of misconceptions within the parents as far as inoculating the children is concerned. Raza Farooq, who's a Prime Minister's focal person for polio eradication, says that a roadmap is being implemented to interrupt the virus transmission by mid-2025, and says that this is a national priority agenda. How important is it for our government to do the needful and indeed implement it as a national priority agenda and to eradicate polio? Will it be a difficult task? Will it be a short-term task? Can it actually be eliminated within 2025 or by the end of 2025 in your point of view?
I mean, I can't predict anything because in this country, there's environment and the circumstances change very quickly, and especially when we have a security situations in different provinces. So the polio campaign is halted. That badly affects the polio campaign when there is a security situation. Like in Palestinian Gaza. There was a halt and there was environmental samples positive, there were cases positive, no polio campaign was done, and they have restarted. However, I mean, they have three priorities already in their roadmap. One is that because Ayesha Raza took over just a couple of months back.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked with her. She's an excellent professional, and she has very good leadership qualities to take the program. And because of her efforts, to be very honest, the polio cases came to negligible number.
All right.
So she has set up, she said, first we will review the entire program, why there are so many cases, which was till August. 2 months for review, 4 months for revisiting the new program components, and to make the entire program based on the lessons learned. And they have developed that. They are in the process of developing that. And the third component, in which they plan to eradicate polio by 2025 June, is targeting the cluster areas from where the maximum number of polio cases have been reported. For example, the DI
because they re-emerge from these cluster areas.
That's
That is
right.
the issue, because you might eliminate from all the areas, but from these cluster areas, there is a little cluster that is still present, and that is where the whole system restarts.
It's like a triple effect, ripple effect, and they double, they triple, the 4 times it becomes the environment pollution of then contamination of the sample, and then unhygienic conditions. By the way, other factors also add to the spread of polio, and that is malnutrition. Because the polio drops are given orally, and if they are not absorbed properly from the stomach, so the effect is less.
All right.
But now the government is also giving injectable polio vaccine.
Injectable polio vaccine, I mean, is it more effective? Is it as effective as the oral?
It's more effective.
It's more effective.
Yeah.
All right. But then, you have to also sensitize the parents. You have to tell them that, we've changed the whole system of.
That's true.
And then you'll say, why this? Why is it being injected? Is there something else that is being injected with it? These misconceptions arise a lot, specifically amongst parents, and that is what we need to really work on as well in order to completely eliminate it. Speaking of elimination, the World Health Organization, Dr. Hasan Orooj, says that we are going to completely eliminate polio by the end of 2025. Are you optimistic about it? I mean, when you talk of polio, this is just Pakistan and Afghanistan, and now, as you said, Palestine, a few cases there as well. But nevertheless, when you say end of 2025, what should countries like Pakistan or Afghanistan do in order to completely, ensure that it ends once and for all, and that they can remain polio-free for 3 years consecutively?
More intense efforts, very strong political and leadership commitment, community engagement, and very importantly is that certain of the steps which you have highlighted before, that they will not be issued the identity cards, the CNIC. I think this is important.
Marriage certificates,
exactly.
death certificates, yes.
I think this is very important because you remember in Islamabad, when there was no fine on the seat belts,
yes,
so there was no problem for any driver
to do whatever he wanted.
There was a fine, everybody put seat belt before starting the car.
True.
So these measures have an impact. So these 4, and I think there's a leadership and political will as well, because the Prime Minister is himself chairing the task force of the polio eradication in Pakistan.
All right. Speaking of the Prime Minister, the 24th of October was Polio Day, and he said that we need to raise awareness and renew our commitment to eradicating polio. How can we raise awareness? You talked about, you know, the role of the religious leaders, you talked about the role of the media as well to some extent. Do you feel these are enough, or do you feel more needs to be? You talked about social media as well and how effective that could be as well. What more should we do in order to raise awareness about the disease?
I think the role models or the people, I mean, we have a lot of young population, married or unmarried, and they are our influencers. In order to take them on board, we have to bring their heroes on board. Like if they idealize a musician, I mean, the musician should be a polio ambassador.
But that should, you know, be specific to the cluster, to the area where
that's right. It depends on the socio-economic and educational background of that cluster as well.
An affinity of to who
Absolutely.
they are more attracted to, whether it's a musician or whether it is a religious leader, whether it is a teacher. I think we should move accordingly. I think this could be an important you know, step to be taken in order to, what more?
And one more thing, the frequency should be very high, because when India they eradicated polio, every 10 minutes a very big hero used to come on the television and say a message. So the frequency should not be like once a week or once a month or when the polio campaign comes. No, it has to be hard hitting on the brain, so it really affects the brain.
Just like the messages on the cigarette
yeah, exactly.
That's
true.
Okay, thank you so very much, Dr. Hasan Orooj, former DG Health Services Islamabad and External Supervisor Public Health, Baylor University, Texas, to have joined us, to have talked to us about poliomyelitis, about the resolve of the government to move forward. Of course, there's another campaign that is going on as we speak, and of course the issues behind it, what needs to be done, and how we should completely eliminate polio as per the directive of the World Health Organization also by the end of 2025, but as per Ayesha Raza Farooq, maybe by mid 2025 we'll be able to do that. But we will just be the first step in a long and arduous journey to completely eliminate polio. As you said, 3 years we need to be completely polio free in order to call ourselves polio negative or polio free.
Certification is issued by WHO.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's
After
interesting.
3 years of no polio case. And one last message can I give?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
To the parents, because it's a government responsibility. Government is doing everything. It's a parental responsibility as well. Unfortunately, if a child gets paralyzed, so the entire family is, you know,
exactly,
sort of, suffers.
Especially when it's
life.
the child, the whole family gets affected. Thank you very much, Dr. Hasan Orooj, to have joined us. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns the situation in Palestine. We know the Middle East is burning as we speak, but we want to kind of relegate ourselves to Palestine as we speak. And of course, the situation as far as Palestine is concerned, the number of casualties that also keeps on increasing. Israeli forces that continue to pound Gaza. They have killed 4 people in 2 separate air raids on safe zones in Mawasi. The rescue operations continue. Nevertheless, at least 50 people have been killed since Sunday evening, at least 11 in the last few hours. And the fact also is that although there's a lot of hope that is pinned on some kind of a ceasefire resolution, still no light at the end of the tunnel. We've been joined by Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti. She's a foreign affairs analyst. Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, thank you very much to have joined us. Let's talk about the casualties. 45,000 plus, 45,200 and something who've been killed, more than 100,000 who've been injured, and these are just the figures that we could call the tip of the iceberg. Then we have the continuous bombardment of the so-called safe zones, the campsites where these people have been displaced, and they are also being bombed. 50 people in the last 24 hours, 11 people in the last few hours. And safe zones, I mean, of all areas, safe zones are being targeted, hospitals are being targeted, and the whole thing paints a very, very grim picture. Entire families wiped out. When, in your point of view, Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, will these atrocities end?
Thank you, Omar. I am seriously hopeless about the situation because as the time passes, we are seeing more and more casualties in the displaced people, and unfortunately, majority of them are the young kids and the students, and those people who are suffering over here, and they are trapped over here, unfortunately living their life as a hell. They are facing a shortage of the basic necessities. I mean, a piece of flour is carrying is the price of the piece of flour is probably more than $100 over there, and a small price of a small tent is not for them easily to purchase, and that is something really disappointing. And then all those areas from where these aid trucks and aid from the international humanitarian agencies were probably coming, and they were all blocked, and they were I think since 4 months there were hardly 30 to 40 trucks they were allowed to be passed and reach to the needy people. And the situation is really really grave, and since we are seeing this the cold weather is approaching, and the people, they are in the need of more and more blankets and the covers and clothing and that, but that is not there. But we have seen that the international community, they are talking about it. They want Israel to come and sit on and to discuss these issues. But on the other hand, we are seeing that the Israeli forces, they are encroachment, they are involved in encroachment, they are involved in illegal settlements, like in Plan B. There are 4 and 5 big settlements of Israeli forces
In the
since
West Bank,
October
yes.
6th. And that is really unfortunate, and that is against the Oslo Accord that has been signed, because these are Palestinian territories according to the accord. And if Israeli government is trying such a kind of activities in which they are trying to illegally occupy the Palestinian land, it means that they are basically violating that two-state agenda, and they are against it. And if they are against the two-state agenda, it means that there is no peace in the future as well. So the things are really in a very grave situation.
You know, Pope Francis condemns the killing of the Palestinian children that has been happening since quite some time. In fact, the Palestinian children have been killed since day one, because the maximum number of casualties in Palestine has been that of women and children. But when a person who's the leader, the spiritual leader of the Christian community across the world talks about that, do statements such as these have any impact whatsoever?
It should have been like this, that his statements and his concerns related to the people in Gaza should have been put more emphasis on the people in international sitting, on the governments in international community, but things are not like that. For as far as the international community is concerned, they are more and more concerned about and they are more curious about their own interests, their own agendas, their own economic and military ties. And we have seen it throughout the history that the Israeli lobbying, it is that much strong in American government and in the Europe, that they are not ready to listen to their own spiritual leaders, and not ready to take actions on the moral grounds or humanitarian grounds. Yes, it is a biggest humanitarian atrocity the people in Gaza are facing, but their economic and military and strategic benefits are far better than these bodies and this bloodshed.
I understand completely. Speaking of the situation of the Palestinians, the health situation is also in dire straits. There is a lack of proper medicine. There is almost no hospital left. Kamal Adwan Hospital, that was one of the only standing hospitals, is being bombarded by the Israelis in the garb of saying that there are extremist elements that are present there. Doesn't the world understand the gravity of the situation? And I mean, you've just said that they are trying to make statements, trying to bring the Israelis on the negotiation table. But shouldn't there be more proactive as far as helping the Palestinian people before all of the Palestinian community dies in Palestine?
Absolutely. The Israeli government, they should look into this, that eventually they are going to make themselves more and more isolated on a diplomatic forum if they are going to be this much rigid in the future. But as we have seen that there have been multiple resolutions passed in Security Council that has been rejected by America and Israeli government. And then we have seen that ICC's jurisdiction has been highly criticized, and Israeli government, they refuse to accept the jurisdiction and the orders of the ICC, and that is unfortunate. It means that the international community, in which the international human rights organizations, they are concerned, but the government, the leaders, the head of the states, they are not concerned. Their agendas are different and far from the humanitarian understanding, and that is unfortunate. And sometimes we feel that there are two big blocks, and one is the all those state leaders, head of the states, head of the governments, they have their own agendas, their own mutual ties with the Israeli, and they are just blindly following those ties. And on the other hand, there are their own people, their human rights agencies, their human rights organizations, the common man in their country, and they are much more concerned. They are not happy with their the governments. We have seen the fall of the Biden government, how the Democrats, they have been badly rejected by their own people, and one of the major factor behind it was their bad policies towards Gaza, towards and their utmost taking side toward Israel. That is actually happened, and the whole Democratic Party, you have seen that they are tarnished. But I'm not seeing anything much fruitful out of it, until unless they are going to look towards Gaza outside of their economic and strategic understanding, and they are going to look into the bloodshed. The 45,000 people have been killed, 1.9 million have been displaced, and those who are trapped over here, they are not finding the basic necessities, and that is really, really grave. But yet here we are with our disappointing scenarios.
All right. Also, Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, let's talk about the Israeli leaders. Benjamin Netanyahu is the first sitting prime minister in Israel to be facing a criminal trial. He has been indicted in 3 cases involving presents from millionaire friends and for allegedly seeking regulatory favors for media tycoons in return for favorable news coverage for him. This is the 5th day. Today was the 5th day that he was facing these trials. Will this trials disease have any effect on Netanyahu? Or any effect, for example, if he's finally indicted, if he faces charges and those charges are confirmed, and will that impact the Israeli policy towards Palestine? Because apparently what a lot of analysts say is that Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to cling to power, and that is why his aggressive and brutal posture towards Palestine since the last 14 months.
Absolutely. Netanyahu's agenda in the whole Middle East has been evident since 90s, when he first came into power in Israel. And since that time, he was involved in all kind of atrocities, all kind of watershed in the Middle East, especially the war in Iraq and then Syria. He has always been there. And now when he came into power last year, and his agenda was to divert the understanding of his own people from his own corruption cases, and he is definitely involved in all these cases. And but there is another thing, that he is being supported by the far right political party, and they are rigid, they are orthodox, they are extremist. And if Biden is going to be if Netanyahu is going to be removed from his position, yet the things are not going to be very different, because the party is going to remain same, and all of them in the party, they are carrying the same staunch rigid agenda to eliminate Palestinians from their land. And
because the thing is that maybe I feel, maybe a lot of others also feel, that if he's formally charged and goes to prison, maybe that will change the posture that Israel has vis-a-vis Palestine. But let's see. We don't know what the next few days have in store as far as the Palestinians are concerned. But what we do know is the plight that they are currently present in all matters whatsoever. Thank you very much, Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, to have joined us, to have discussed the plight of the Palestinian people 14 months since this whole crisis, this whole genocide began. Let's come to our last 2 stories. The first concerns Donald Trump, the president-elect of the US, who has threatened to retake the Panama Canal and has accused Panama of unfair means. He says that Panama is charging excessive rates to use the vital Central American passage, which of course has triggered a very strong response from the Panamanian president Jose Raul Molino. who also says that whatever is being said is not true. Trump criticizes Panama's fees as ridiculous and highly unfair, says it was given to Panama and the people of Panama, but it has provisions. You get to treat us fairly, and they haven't treated us fairly. Let's see what happens. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the South Korean team has developed what they call an Ironman robot that helps paraplegics walk. With paraplegia, none of your limbs have the ability to move. And so, a discovery such as this, or an invention such as this, and of course naming it after a famous Marvel figure, becomes more interesting. You can see in this video that this paraplegic can now stand. This is something that he or she would not have been able to do without the aid or the help of such an Iron Man robot. This powered exoskeleton, the robot is an exoskeleton because it kind of covers your whole body, and that is how the body is able to move. It's called a walk-on suit F1. It features aluminum and titanium composition, weighs 50 kilograms, and is powered by 12 electric motors that simulate the movements of human joints while walking. Very interesting. We live in times when we are seeing the advent of AI, we are seeing the advent of such robotic machines that help paraplegics walk. So, every new day brings to us a new discovery for the betterment of mankind. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.